Hi, welcome to Transmissions from the Transgender Battleground. I'm CatLady762, and today's video is Welcome to the Wide World of Non-Man Sports. A few years ago, I noticed an interesting phenomena in the LGBTQ plus community. I saw more and more events that were advertised as being inclusive of a wide variety of identities. You would have events where women were allowed, trans women were allowed, any variety of non-binary identity was allowed, and trans men were allowed. So essentially, anybody who did not identify as a man was allowed to attend such an event. Now, how that was actually policed, I don't know, because when all it takes is saying that you are not a man to suddenly not be one, um, really isn't that hard to, get in. But now, women's sports apparently are under those same guidelines. Currently, the 2020 Olympics is underway in 2021. And this is the first Olympics where openly transgender athletes are competing. As far as I'm aware, you have two. You have Laurel Hubbard, a trans woman, competing in the women's super heavyweight weightlifting competition. And you have Quinn, a non-binary female who is a member of the Canadian women's soccer team. Hubbard did not win their event. Quinn is, at the time of this recording, on track to get a silver or a gold medal. Now, both situations, with both athletes, present different issues. And, in my opinion, illustrate the issue of the contradictory nature of these policies and some aspects of trans ideology. Now, I will be clear that both people are competing under current guidelines from the International Olympic Committee and have the right to compete the way they are. Fortunately, a statement has come out saying that the International Olympic Committee will be reviewing said guidelines following these Olympics. But the situation still stands right now. And what you have is you have one situation, Hubbard, that says the identity of woman is what is allowing you to compete. That identity trumps sex. So that opens sports up, women's sports, for women and trans women. Then you have Quinn, who does not identify as a woman, but they are female. So in their case, their sex trumps their identity. And so being female allows them to compete with women. Now, to be clear, as I said in a previous video, I personally have no issue if you are female, no, regardless of how you identify, with you competing against other females in sports, provided that you are not on testosterone, which, to my knowledge, Quinn is not. So, by my personal opinion, Quinn is competing in the correct category. They are female with no medical or biological advantage above the rest of the females they are competing against. But you can see where the contradiction comes into play. Hubbard competes as a woman because they identify as a woman. Quinn competes as a woman despite not identifying as one. So in one case, identity is the factor, but not in another. Now, we do not have this situation currently, but presumably, if you had a male person that identifies as non-binary and they wanted to compete in women's sports, provided that they were also suppressing testosterone to the approved level that is required of trans women, they would also be allowed to compete in women's sports. So women's sports is no longer women's sports. Women's sports is sports for everybody who is not a man. And specifically, apparently, everybody who is not a cis man. So, congratulations, women's sports. You are inclusive. Interestingly, that inclusion is really only working in one direction. More and more people now qualify to play in women's sports. I understand why people are saying that this is an issue. Sports is not a infinite resource thing. You have limited spaces, a limited number of people able to compete, and so the more people that are allowed in a category, the less people in that category that actually will be able to compete. This video is really about sports, but it's about mainly how these policies, kind of across the board, have similar impact on women. Who is allowed in women's spaces? Essentially, everybody that says they're not a man. That's it. And what does it take to say you're not a man? Saying you're not a man. Hopefully, this will change. But, as always, that's just my opinion. Thank you.